Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thank you for tuning in for the year-end episode of the PBC Podcast. And who better to sum up the year for us than the president of SHOWTIME Sports and Event Programming, Stephen Espinoza. You don't want to miss what Stephen had to say a little later in the show. Plus, undefeated lightweight prospect Frank Martin will be joining us as well. Martin takes on Romero Duno atop a Fox card on New Year's Day, leading into the heavyweight extravaganza pay-per-view Saturday night. More on that in a sec. Instead of toe-to-toe this week, we will be announcing our PBC year-end award winners. Some good categories, if we may say so ourselves. And don't forget, guys, voting has begun for the Best of PBC 2021 awards starting from Monday, the 27th. I'm sure you guys have already voted by then. By the time you hear this, through Thursday, a new poll will be published for Prospect of the Year, KO of the Year, Fight of the Year, and Fighter of the Year in that order on Twitter and YouTube. Votes will be tallied from both polls, and the winner of each poll will be announced the next day. The schedule looks like this. So Monday was the Prospect of the Year poll. Tuesday, December 28th, Knockout of the Year poll, plus the Prospect of the Year winner reveal. Wednesday, December 29th, Fight of the Year poll and the Knockout of the Year winner reveal. And then Thursday, December 30th, Fighter of the Year poll plus Fight of the Year winner reveal. And then Friday, December 31st, Fighter of the winner reveal. So make sure you get on Twitter, get on Facebook, and put your vote in for the guys that you want to win. But let's get back to the New Year's Day pay-per-view with the PBC Fight of the Week. It's New Year's Day, the hangover has worn off, and it's time to let the fisticuffs fly. 5 heavyweight matchups Saturday night, January 1st on PBC Fox Sports pay-per-view. And in the main event, Luis King Kong Ortiz returns against former world champion Charles Martin in an IBF heavyweight title eliminator. Mike, let's begin with the essentials.
Okay, here we go. Luis Ortiz, 32-2, 27 knockouts. Charles Martin, 28-2-1, 25 knockouts. They are both 4-1 with 3 KOs in their last 5 fights. Last fight for Ortiz was Alexander Flores. First round knockout, actually only 45 seconds. November of last year. So it's quite a long layoff for him. For Martin, it was a 6th round TKO victory over Gerald Washington in February of last year. So it'll be almost 2 years since he was in the ring. Ortiz, 75% knockout ratio. Martin, 81%. 162 rounds, professional rounds for Ortiz, 105 for Martin. Ortiz is 42, Martin 35. Ortiz turned pro 2010, Martin in 2012. They're both southpaws, both tall guys. Ortiz 6'4", Martin 6'5". Ortiz 78-inch reach. Martin has that long 80-inch reach. Ortiz is Cuban, lives in Miami. Martin's from St. Louis, but he's living in Southern California.
Oh, I didn't realize Martin was taller than Ortiz, and also that reach advantage.
Long reach. Yeah.
Longer, yeah. Now, one thing you brought up was the time off for both guys, a 14-month layoff for Ortiz, a near 2-year layoff for Martin. Will ring rust be a factor for these guys?
Obviously, that's hard to say, but those are long layoffs, particularly for Martin. As I said, he will have been out of the ring for almost 2 years. You know, on one hand, I see them as veterans who know how to prepare for a fight, which is probably how it'll come down. And on the other hand, they're not youngsters anymore. So I wonder if they might lose something sitting on the sidelines for so long. My gut tells me these guys are going to be ready. They're both really hungry. From what I could tell, they both want to make the most out of the time that they have left. So I think we're going to see the best versions of these guys.
Give us your thoughts on Luis Ortiz at this stage of his career.
Well, as I said, he's 42, not young. At the same time, I think he's a pretty fresh 42. I thought he looked good in the rematch against Deontay Wilder until he got caught and then he didn't look so good. That was November 2019. He just destroyed Alexander Flores in his last fight, although we can't read too much, and it was over before it started, basically. I think he's still the well-schooled, experienced boxer who's got that power, which is never going to go away. And I just don't think he's slowed down that much. I think he's still a really good heavyweight. I think he's dangerous for any opponent, anybody right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Of course, we'll see on Saturday night. It's been a while since we've seen him in. I mean, there was that 45-second match, but didn't really tell us much. What about Martin? What's your take on him?
I'll back into this. I don't think he's the fighter who was overwhelmed by Anthony Joshua in the first defense of his title. You remember he had that short title reign. I had a chance to talk to him. We were talking about how difficult it was for him fighting with a rib injury in the Joshua fight. He was just a mess, apparently, and I think there was other things going on at the same time. So he's still motivated by that setback. He's still determined to show people that that's not who he is. As I mentioned, he's 4-1 since that fight with a close decision loss to Adam Kovnatsky. That's it. He's a decent boxer, although Ortiz, you got to see Ortiz is the better pure technician. But like Ortiz, he can crack. This guy can really punch. I think Martin's probably better than some people might realize.
Yeah, he closed strong against Konopsky, and he does have that knockout over Gerald Washington. So, and no question, he's hungry. Where do you rank Ortiz and Martin today among heavyweights?
I think you have to, rank them right below the top level, which is Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Deontay Wilder, and possibly Anthony Joshua. I think they're in the same class as guys like the Dillian Whites and the Andy Ruizes and the Joseph Parkers, or at least close to those guys. Maybe Ortiz is a little bit ahead of Martin going into this fight. Of course, I should note that the winner on Saturday takes a pretty big step forward. And, if the man who has his hand raised gets a title shot, then, especially with their power, anything could happen. So these guys might have some big things in their future.
Yeah, lots at stake. Style-wise, how do you expect this fight to play out?
They're similar in a way. They both fight with what I call responsible aggression, meaning they'll patiently set up their opportunities. And when the opportunities come, these are two guys that really mean business. They both throw hard punches. As I said earlier, they're both knockout minded, as their high KO percentages indicate. These aren't two guys who are going to dance around and try to win a decision, although they'll take it if it comes. I just think this fight might come down to who lands the big punch first.
Yeah, exactly. And who are you predicting will land that first big punch?
I think I mentioned on previous podcasts that I was leaning toward Martin, and I was considering that, who I think is better than the fighter who lost to Joshua. And he seems really motivated to me. Plus, I keep wondering whether when Ortiz is going to show signs of his age. In the end, though, Ortiz, who has similar power to Martin, is clearly a better, more experienced boxer. I suspect he'll outbox Martin, set up good opportunities, land some hard punches, and eventually I think he's going to take Martin out. I'm going to say Ortiz by an 8th round knockout.
Oh, I like it because I like Ortiz by mid-round KO. So starting off the new year, basically with the same pick, and that's kind of how we ended the last year. So something's got to give this year. Now, you've got 5 heavyweight bouts on the stack card. Heavyweight rising star Frank the Cuban Flash Sanchez battling Christian Hammer in the co-main event. Hammer replaces Carlos Negron, who was forced to withdraw after a positive COVID test. And, one quick note, the pay-per-view action begins at 8 p.m. Eastern time. You also got heavyweight contenders Johnny Rice and Michael Coffey in their rematch. Gerald Washington against Ali Aaron Demirenzin, and unbeaten heavyweight prospect Victor Faust fighting Iago Kalaji in a 10-round attraction to open the pay-per-view. And kicking it all off on New Year's Day on Fox will be the undefeated rising prospect. This fighter is one of the more impressive young guys that we've seen in the sport recently. He takes on the hard-hitting Romero Duno on a card that begins at 5 p.m. Eastern time. You definitely don't want to miss it. Frank Martin. Frank, you're headlining Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern time against Romero Duno live on Fox. How excited are you for this opportunity?
I'm excited. I'm ready to go out there, put on the show, and then just being able to, headline the show leading up to a pay-per-view event, just working my way to pay-per-view spot, it's a blessing to be able to do that.
Does that provide you with a little extra motivation, knowing that you've got a big spotlight on you and you're leading to an even bigger fight with the pay-per-view?
Absolutely.
That's good to hear, man. Now, your opponent, Romero Duno, what can you tell us about him?
He's a strong fighter. He throws a lot of punches. He comes forward. I feel he switch it up. He can come forward. He can kind of move, hit angles. But for the most part, I feel like he's a guy who looks for a big shot, and I feel he's just gonna come in trying to land a big shot, or maybe even just get me tired, or I feel that may be those guys' strategy.
Frank, you sort of answered my first question. He's known as a pretty big puncher, so you do expect him just to come out and be aggressive and try to knock you out?
Yeah, that's what I expect. But you in boxing, you just got to be ready for anything. Just being able to adapt to whatever the guy brings, whatever style he brings. Come fight night.
Right.
I just got to be able to adapt.
Right. So we saw Ryan Garcia knock Duno out in one round, but Duno's he's won 3 straight fights since then, all of them in the first couple of rounds, by the way. Is there a danger in trying to replicate, trying to do what Garcia did? And also, is there any concern that people might compare performances? Like Garcia did this against Duno, and now we're going to see what Frank Martin does against Duno?
I mean, you can say, Ryan knocked the guy out in 1 round or whatever it may be. I believe styles make fights, and I feel that the trained eye understands. They will understand, like if a guy knocks him out in 4 or 3, I feel it really doesn't matter. That doesn't determine which fighter is better. You got some fighters who look for knockouts early. You got some fighters who, if they present themselves, they go for them, or, if they present themselves, basically they go for them. They like to box and then open up openings, So I would say it's no pressure, or I'm not really trying to outbeat what Ryan did. I'm just going in, I'm going to fight my fight.
Yeah, it's good. That's a good way to look at it. Now, I wanted to know, your nickname is The Ghost. Where does that come from?
So 2016, when I was fighting for the championship and the National Golden Gloves, the lights had cut off in a hotel that we were staying in. And once the lights cut off, all the guys who was training to cut weight, everybody just had stopped working out. And then, my trainers, they put the lights on, the flashes on their phones, they turned those flashes on. So in that room, we was in like a big little room, and I was running circles around the room, just trying to cut weight or whatever. And you could like see my shadows on the wall. And then just the whole concept of me coming out of the blue, just in boxing, beating some of the top amateurs at the time, it was kind of surprising to a lot of people. So kind of got the nickname Ghost from those type of things. And then also my fighting style.
Yeah, I figured it had to be your fighting style, your defense, and so forth. But that's a great story. Now, you brought up the Golden Gloves. You were the first person from Indiana to win a National Golden Gloves title in 23 years. How did you first get involved in boxing?
I just was always a fighter. I always wanted to fight when I was younger. My mom, she wouldn't let me. So, once I had turned like 18, I had kind of just signed up and did it on my own. And I just stuck with it. I've been doing it since.
Who are some of the fighters you admired growing up?
Pernell Whitaker, Errol Spence, Floyd Mayweather's defense, Meldrick Taylor. I like Roberto Duran's body work. I like his. I pick up quite a few things from Roberto Duran and like my body work and stuff. And also the body snatcher. I be getting this question a lot, and like my list is so long on who I pick up things from. I kind of like try to pick up a little bit from every fighter and kind of throw it into my little pan.
That's good. That's a good idea.
I like that. And you're going pretty far back with some of these guys, so that's cool. Your first cousin is NFL linebacker Jalen Smith, who now plays for the New York Giants. How inspiring is that to you?
It's definitely motivating. That right there keep me going. We always talk, just about being patient, just waiting my turn, waiting my time and stuff, and things will unfold. But just having him, in my ear, just, it's extra motivation, with him being there, like already on the top stage, what all the adversity he went through and what he's still going through, it keep me going.
Have you ever sparred with him?
No, he ain't ready.
Does athleticism just run in your family? You have a few athletes in your family?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Come from an athletic family.
Oh.
Brothers, uncles, everybody. Jalen got a brother, a big brother named Rod Smith. He was playing for Cowboys, things like that as well.
Oh wow. That is impressive. And now you got the natural athleticism, and you've connected with one of the game's best trainers in Derek James. How did you guys connect?
We sat down, actually, me, Jalen, Derek, sat down, we had lunch, and, just sat down, talked it out, and it had always been something that I, felt would be good if I was able to get with these guys, with Derek James and Earl Spence and those guys, just get over there, considering, he was already training the left-hander. I always had looked up to, Spence and what he had going on. So it was kind of dope. I came down, visited Jalen, and he was just sitting down talking, and he asked me like, would you want to train with, to train with people who you want to train with? So I told him that, and then he like, you know what? I'm gonna try to see if we can make it happen and we can bring it to life. And we brought it to life.
Love it.
Wow.
What has it been like working with Derek, and what do you think makes him such a special coach?
Really the training style. It's not so much off of. We don't train off athleticism. We train in. He's a teacher. He's a teacher, not just a coach. He can tell me how to do things, tell me what to do, show me how to do it, what to look out for. It's just different. He just basically, showing science to the boxing game instead of just my natural athleticism.
Got it. You have a lot of accomplished fighters in that gym, obviously. Errol Spence, Jermell Charlo, Marcus Brown, and other guys. What's it been like being around those kind of fighters?
It's motivating. It keeps me going. Just, I ask guys certain things on. It may be something they do in the gym that I like. I might ask them, like, why you do that way? Or, just being able to pick those guys' brains on, certain things that they do or certain stages that they were at, and how did they get certain stages and stuff, being able to talk to guys at the elite level and the top level, getting game from those guys to keep me going and motivated.
Sounds like you're a real student of the game, looking back, at the old timers and the guys that are around you. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I have to ask, Frank, have you seen Errol in the gym lately? And if yes, how is the brother looking?
Oh, he's looking good. He's sharp. He on point. He is on point right now.
Really? He's ready.
I told him the other day, yesterday, he on point. He looking real good.
Wow. I love hearing that. Now, we don't stay on Errol for too long. Getting back to you. This Duno fight is a big step up for you. I know you don't want to look too far ahead, but in your opinion, how far away are you from challenging the big dogs in the division?
I honestly feel that I'm ready for, the top guys in the division. I'm getting the best training that I can get. I got the natural skills. I feel that I'm ready. I'm not overlooking Duno or anything like that, but honestly, I feel like, I got the tools and the training and stuff that I need. So, if the opportunities to fight one of those big guys just present themselves, I'll be ready.
Very, very good.
But time will show. Time will show. I gotta get, Duno. I gotta get this win over Duno, and then hopefully something can happen after that.
So after hearing what you had to say during this interview, I'm guessing you'll be able to do this. So if you had to put the top 5 in the division in order, who would they be?
Man, they all are. I wouldn't do an order.
Okay, how about just 5 in no specific order? Yeah.
At this point, because it's just like the 135 division is just like, really, honestly, I feel like nobody is safe in the 135 division.
Right.
Like you got now you got Isaac Cruz, you got Camboso, you guys it's just like it's tough right now to even say. So if I was to list, you could say Tank, you could say, and this doesn't go in no order. You could say Tank, Devin Haney, Camboso, both Tiafimo still in there, Lomachenko. I would say those guys.
It's a good division, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the division wide open. It's like it's literally nobody is safe in the division.
Yeah, it makes it interesting for us. So
absolutely, you got guys like me.
Yeah. And you got guys like you coming up, so could you get even more interesting? So the last question for you: do you have a prediction for Saturday night?
No, I wouldn't say I got a prediction. I'm gonna just go out there and work the game plan that we've been working. And if I got to box the guy all 10 rounds, I'll be able to do that. If you run into a shot and the night goes early, that right there would be okay too. But for the most part, we are ready to go the distance if we have to. But if not, if a shot presents itself or anything like that in any of the rounds, we're gonna take it.
Good deal, Frank.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure having you on. Best of luck in this fight, and we definitely would love to have you back on.
All right, now thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. All the best.
All right, now y'all have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Saturday, January 1st, it's a stacked night of heavyweight fights as Luis King Kong Ortiz
looking impressive.
takes on Prince Charles Martin.
Just the way he wanted it.
Frank Sanchez battles Carlos Negron. Plus, Rice versus Coffee 2 and more. Get ready for a New Year's Day knockout. Live at only $39.99. Buy now on the Fox Sports app and watch on any screen you want.
Last Saturday on Christmas night, Fox PBC Fight Night returned with welterweight prospect Vito Melnicki Jr. in his homecoming headliner at Prudential Center, Newark, New Jersey. Melnicki outboxed and then stopped Nicholas Deloma in the 10th and final round to the delight of the ringside supporters. A big win to close out the year for Melnicki and a big night for the sport. Mike, what were your thoughts on boxing on Christmas Day?
I'll watch boxing on any day of the year. As we discussed last week, Christmas is a day for families, but it has also become a day to watch sports. I thought the fight fit in nicely right after the NFL game ended. And we talked about this off the podcast. I love seeing those Melnicki Delamba promos during the game. That was just huge. I mean, there's a lot of eyes on that. Yeah. What great exposure for a young prospect like Melnicki.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we haven't gotten the final numbers back, but I mean, nearly 3 million people, based on the fast national numbers, nearly 3 million people watched the fight. So, I mean, very, very impressive viewership, lots of exposure for these young guys. Honestly, I think it should be a yearly thing. I mean, other sports do that on holidays. Why not boxing? What was your take on Melnicki's performance?
I thought it was a solid performance. He told us that he didn't feel any pressure, but I have to think some of that crept in the end. I mean, fighting in your first main event, your first 10-rounder in front of the hometown fans on national television at 19 years old, that's a perfect storm for some serious butterflies, I'm pretty sure. In spite of that, I thought he performed well. He won pretty much every round, and he stopped him in the end. I wouldn't call this a flaw in his performance, but I kept waiting for him to sort of take things to the next level, to blow out Delamba, kind of the way that Joey Spencer blew out Limburg Ponce.
Yeah.
He got Mielnicki got the knockout, which was impressive, but I wouldn't call his performance spectacular or anything like that. I would call it solid, but that only means he has room to grow, which makes perfect sense given his age. He's still a teenager.
He sure is. And, I think he learned a lot last Saturday. In your opinion, what should be next for him?
Well, as he told us, there's absolutely no rush. He just graduated from high school, after all. He has that great amateur background, but he's still in the early stages of his development. I would continue to fight guys like Delamba for a while, let him grow as a fighter, and then talk about shooting for world titles. I think he mentioned maybe 2023 or something like that. Yeah, that makes sense to me, and it'll probably happen at 154 pounds, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, who knows where he'll be at by then. But absolutely, I liked his thinking when he was on the podcast last week and said 2022, 2023, right about that time. I think there's no need to rush it with him. Now, in the co-feature, and you brought this up, the reigning prospect of the year, undefeated super welterweight Joey Spencer, continued to show really impressive progress. Knocked out Limburg Ponce in the 5th round. Mike, that was a highlight reel KO.
Yeah, I thought that Spencer looked sensational in that fight. Ponce was no world beater, but he was a solid guy who had never been stopped in his career. And Spence, at first he just outclassed him, and then he took him out. I thought Spencer actually, did I just call him Spencer, showed more maturity, maybe more patience than in earlier fights, which I really liked. And then it paid off in the end. I love the way he finished the fight. That was just vicious. Really good performance by him. And remember, he's only 21 years old, so he's just a kid too.
Yeah. He's got a lot of poise for, someone who's only 21 years old. Who would you like to see Spencer face next?
I think he's in a similar position as Mielnicki, although he might be a little bit farther along in his development. He is a couple of years older. Spencer hasn't even fought a 10-rounder yet, so there's definitely no rush. I'd have him face more guys like the guy just fought, work on his technique, get some more wins under his belt, and then, like Mielnicki, talk about opportunities to fight for titles a little bit later on. That said, I'm pretty sure he could handle some guys who are ranked right now. I just wouldn't rush into it, but I think he's super talented.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that at this point, we're starting to see why there was so much praise for this kid coming out of the amateurs, and we see the development as a professional. Can't wait to see what he does next. Also on the card, Rajon Chance took on Elon De Jesus again. It was a rematch of their September bout that ended in a majority draw. By the way, their rivalry dates back to 2018 when they fought in the amateurs. Chance won that by split decision, and he won this one by split decision in another tough battle. Mike, what was your take on his performance?
It's kind of odd to have like a rivalry so early in their careers, but here we are. I liked what I saw from Chance in several respects. He's obviously a skillful guy, although with 6 fights, he's still developing. He's super quick, super athletic. He has fighting spirit that I think is attractive. And he proved in that fight that he's a tough guy. It was only a 6-rounder, but that was a rough fight. And Chance was up to the challenge. He appears to be a good prospect to me. He just needs to be polished, a little bit more polished.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Now, in the Fox opener, we witnessed a fantastic performance from undefeated Cuban welterweight prospect Yoelvis Gomez. Gomez obliterated veteran Clay Collard in 1 round. After watching that, like, I guess the question on everyone's mind is what and who is next for Gomez?
Hey, I didn't really know who this guy was, but now I do. That dude seems to have the goods. Collard hasn't done well of late, but he's an experienced combat sports guy with an awkward style that gives some guys trouble, and Gomez just annihilated him. The Cuban knows how to box, and he also has power. He's also only 24, so he's young. I know he's already ranked by the WBA, but with only 5 fights, I think it might be a mistake to rush him into something he can't handle. Although it's not clear what he can and can't handle. He's got only 5 fights. I would give him more time to mature also. I think a few more fights against second tier guys will prepare him for something big. But I really don't think, in spite of the 5 fights, I really don't think he's that far away. I think this kid is talented.
Right. But I agree with you. I always err on the side of caution when it comes to these young guys in terms of taking your time. Now, quick note on the FS1 prelims, congrats are in order to Kenneth Sims Jr., who looked great, outpointing the previously unbeaten Keyshawn Williams, also unbeaten super welterweight prospect Trayvon Marshall, one of the best young prospects in the sport today, scored a 4th round TKO over Brian Jones. Plus, Newark's Michael Anderson scored a 3rd round knockout over Noe Lopez in what was a great night of boxing. Speaking of great nights, his network had a lot of those in 2021, and it's been that way for a while, since he came on board over a decade ago. The president of Showtime Sports and Event Programming, Stephen, first things first, how have your holidays been?
They've been great. I hesitate because I'm getting over a case of COVID that I got, the week after Tank. I was caught up in the BWAA dinner, COVID spread, my girlfriend and I, but thankfully it was just about a week. I thought I might have to skip Christmas, but I'm home in upstate in New York with family, so everything's good.
So you're feeling better, everything, and she's doing well?
Yeah. Everything's good, thank God.
That's good to hear. Did you get a chance to rest at all, or I suspect you sort of work through everything anyway? But have you had a chance to rest?
This one I was able to work through a little bit. I did miss the Jake Paul pay-per-view, and it's it's always hard, sitting at home when you've got a bunch of colleagues out at the event, working their tails off, and you want to be there with them. And but it was other than that was the hardest part, is sitting home and missing out on all the action on the big pay-per-view.
Stephen, the year's almost over and we're looking at 2022 and we're still dealing with this pandemic, unfortunately. How are you and your team at Showtime preparing for this latest surge that the NBA and the NFL is currently dealing with?
It's something that's the top of your conversation a lot with PBC, with TGB, internally throughout Showtime and Viacom CBS. I think through the bubble that collectively, PBC and TGB did with us at Mohegan in 2020, I think that was very successful. We did a lot of events, a lot of MMA events. We had minimal cases. I mean, in total cases we could count on one hand, and it was really successful, but it was really difficult. I mean, basically, as you guys are well aware, it's basically get there on Wednesday and stay in your room through Sunday when you leave. Other than the event, you're ordering room service, you're not socializing, you're not leaving, even really for takeout food. Look, we had relaxed the protocols. At Showtime, Viacom, CBS, there is a mandatory vaccination requirement. So testing was way off. The quarantining and isolation was, we had sort of left that behind. But I think that's going to come back in some form. This thing is so contagious and moving so quickly. It would really be irresponsible not to do some screening going forward. What level remains to be seen. But I think as we're seeing this thing spread so easily, I have one colleague that I know has been infected twice in the last 10 weeks. Nobody on the boxing team, but another person we work with, at Showtime and CBS. And, it's just we're still figuring this thing out, but I think it is going to warrant some more precautions being put in place, although I don't think anybody wants to go back to the kind of protocols we had in place last year.
Right. Might sound crazy. Like 2 years ago, we had never even heard of this thing. And now you guys are kind of like experts in dealing with this or coping with this. It's crazy. You didn't even know what it was 2 years ago.
Right.
I was watching the NBA on Christmas Day, like a lot of us, and Jeff Van Gundy comes on, early in the game, and had a sentiment I think that all of us can probably identify with. And he just made the comment in passing, if I never hear the word protocols again, it'll be too soon. And it is a word that wasn't in our vocabulary 18 months ago, 2 years ago. You really didn't talk about protocols. And now we all, as soon as we hear the word protocol, we all know what that means and what it requires.
Yeah. It's crazy. Now, in terms of boxing, you guys had another great year at Showtime in a market that we heard was too ferocious, too competitive. What do you attribute Showtime boxing staying power to?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I mean, obviously, we've got the benefit of having access to PBC's deep talent pool, and probably I think pretty clearly the deepest pool of talent, of any group in the sport. But I think over the last few years, we've seen a tremendous amount of change, a lot of new entities, new platforms, new money coming into the sport. And what it required on our part was discipline, was really understanding, what our goals were, what our objectives were, which are, to be here for the long run, not to, win a particular quarter or 6 months or even a year. Our goal is to, continue to deliver high level boxing in the long term, now going on 35 years. So, it required some tough decisions when people were spending like drunken sailors. We had to pass on some events that we really wanted very badly. Some big events that just financially, the numbers that we'd be throwing around didn't make sense for our business model. So that's difficult. I mean, seeing fights that you want, fights that are, high quality fights, sometimes boxers that we've invested a lot and spent a lot of time and energy on, going to other platforms, largely because of, a decision we made not to engage or not to bid or not to match an offer from the outside. And in the short term, that's tough. But, as we ride through, and here we are 2-3 years later, when people, as Kenneth, as you sort of alluded to, we're saying that we didn't have the money, that we didn't have the resources to compete, that this wasn't the type of network that was going to be committed to boxing long term, that we didn't have the deep pockets, and we're still here, and not only are we still here, we're here at the forefront of the industry, and putting on the biggest and best events in the sport. So that it really is, it really depends on knowing your business model, knowing what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and knowing what you can do in the long run, for long-term stability, not overspending, not chasing one particular fight, but remembering that it's not about one fight here or there. It's about years of programming and a commitment to the sport, and a belief that our investment in the sport will return to us.
Now, one thing we saw in 2021 as far as your events were strong 3-fight cards where the participants were evenly matched. Was that a focus for the year, and can we expect more of that in 2022?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is one of the things that distinguishes the Showtime cards from virtually everybody else in the sport nowadays. And I'm not saying that no one else has talent on their undercard, but when you're seeing guys like Rais Aleem, Otto Wallin, Isaac Cruz, Jaron Ennis, Danny Roman, Xavier Martinez, Subriel Matias, Gary Antoine Russell. I mean, these are all guys who are opening fights or co-features in competitive fights. So the reality, is we do 3-fight cards because, we might as well. We're committed to the sport. We're there. It doesn't make sense to us to do 1 or 2-fight cards. And we know we're getting an audience. We know we've got the sport's attention, and it's critical to use that, and to develop guys like Gary Antoine Russell, like Subriel Matias, like, Danny Roman, like Brandon Lee. And you're seeing competitive fights, opening fights. And I would put some of the majority of our opening fights against a lot of other platforms' main events. I mean, it's night and day, really what we're doing with the undercards. And it's not just names, but names in competitive fights. We've had some upsets. We have some really good fights. And that's what happens when you're matching tough, throughout the card. Not every fight is going to end up exactly the way you expected it to.
Stephen, we also saw something unprecedented this year, pay-per-views on Sunday night, Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul and Tank Davis versus Isaac Cruz. What went into the decision to put pay-per-views on Sunday nights, and can we expect to see more in the future?
Well, there's a little bit out of necessity. This has been because of the backlog of sporting events and music. If you're paying attention to sort of where the music industry is and music touring in particular, it seemed like every act in the world is going on tour third and fourth quarter of this year and early 22. And that has sort of a domino effect because not only are we not only are we now competing with, all the sports who are returning to full action, now we're having, huge tours, a lot more artists out on tour and a lot more extended tours, big acts doing 3 or 4 acts in a city, camping out on a weekend and occupying the venues. For example, the Tank card at Staples on December, that ended up on Sunday simply because that was really, other than, the week between Christmas and New Year's, where there were some open dates, that Sunday was the only open date at Staples in the last half of the year. So, we had made a decision, back in the summer that, Tank, would be good for Tank to get some West Coast exposure and build up that fan base. And Staples is obviously the premier venue in Southern California. But the trade-off we made is there's only, one date that was available other than in the middle of the holidays, which has its own challenges. So we took it. And the reality is, we all know the historical view. There've been big closed circuit fights historically. Some of the biggest fights in the sport have been on Monday nights, on Tuesday nights, on nights other than Saturday. So, Sunday night, I think, could make sense. I think it makes sense more when you're not competing against Sunday night football. Then you have a little bit more of an open runway. But I do think that we have to remain open because, we used to be the only sport going Saturday night. And that changed about 2 or 3 years ago when college football and to a lesser extent NBA and NFL started going regularly with some of their marquee events on Saturday night. So we've got to be just as flexible and, go where the audience can find us and go to the paths of least resistance sometimes.
Makes sense. This year, we also saw the return of Floyd Mayweather and Canelo Alvarez to Showtime. We also saw the Charlo twins, Caleb Plant, and several others come back to the network as well. Is there anyone that hasn't fought on Showtime recently that you'd love to bring back? Any names jump to your head?
Well, sure. Look, we've got a long history with Deontay Wilder. We've done 12 or 13 events with Deontay. And we love to see him back on the network. I think he's got a lot of mileage still left, a lot of gas left in the tank. Whenever he decides to return, we'd love to have, him back as well. I think there's still some intriguing fights. He had a really competitive trilogy, really entertaining trilogy with Tyson Fury. And just because, you get a couple of losses, it certainly, I think when you've got somebody as entertaining and as big a personality as Deontay, we would love to have him back. I think that's the obvious one that jumps to mind.
Good. Another phenomenon.
I would say,
Sorry.
yeah. The other one, now that I've said that is Errol Spence. Errol has bounced around to several networks, but, we always considered, we've done some of his sort of landmark fights from his pro debut to his title fight, Kell Brook in Sheffield. He's another guy that we'd love to see back in Showtime in the near future.
Good. Another phenomenon has been the success of Jake Paul in terms of his ability to stir things up. You've been around boxing a long time. What is it about him, do you think, that attracts people?
He's got the ability in a similar way to Floyd to generate attention. It comes naturally. Whether it's something he says or something he does or a joke or sometimes intentional trolling or an outfit or just a couple lines in a Twitter post. Those are guys who just intuitively understand the market, their audience, and how to generate attention in a very real way, and not in a sort of here today, gone tomorrow way. I mean, obviously, both of those guys spent years and years building a fan base and getting to know their fan base. So, people, I understand some of the backlash, some of the negativity, but I think people are sort of judging Jake and what he's doing by the wrong side of criteria. No one says that he's a championship level boxer. He'll be the first to tell you that he's early in his career. And I'm not even sure, that he's intending to be in the sport, to be at the championship level for 20, 30 fights. But what he is doing is providing entertainment and bringing a lot of eyeballs to the sport that wouldn't otherwise pay attention. I don't think that's in doubt anymore. I was skeptical at first. I was skeptical with the first couple events, and I thought, I'm not sure that this is providing an opportunity to the sport if his fans are sticking around. And I've been converted. I've saw it firsthand. That's why we made the decision to get in business with him. And then we saw it even more on an in-depth level. His fans are becoming boxing fans. They are sticking around for other events. And he is bringing an entirely different demographic and different age group to the sport. And for that alone, I think boxing fans should welcome him.
That knockout didn't hurt either, did it?
That's, again, regardless of where you rank him in as your favorite boxer or most talented boxer, that's a legitimate knockout. That's as legitimate a knockout as any you'll see this year. And it depends and certainly deserves its place on, list of potential knockout of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely went viral. And that's the biggest criteria for knockout of the year, in my opinion. You brought up Errol Spence earlier. He's considered the king of the welterweights, but there's one person lurking on the horizon, Jaron Boots Ennis, who many people consider a future champion and a star. When can we expect to see him back in the ring, and what do you see for him in his immediate future?
I would say it's probably March, April, somewhere in there. And I think now it's, there's really no doubt that it's time to get him at least in position for a legitimate title fight. So I think in the next fight, you'll probably see him, in an eliminator type fight, maybe to position him as a mandatory, maybe for a regular title here or there. Something like those, certainly, he wouldn't turn down a world title shot in any of them, but, there's a lot of those are already taken. So I think there's one fight to position him as a mandatory or as an eliminator or someone who's in line. And I think, probably at some point this year, a legitimate world title shot. I think it's time. He's proven his ability, and it's time to see him against an elite, top of the division type guy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be happy to hear that. One other person that we mentioned before, Canelo Alvarez, returned to Showtime this year for the first time since, I believe, 2014, 2015. Give us your thoughts on his network homecoming and what that meant for you.
I think it was important for the sport. I think it was obviously important for Showtime. It allowed us to continue sort of the business that we had started with him back in 2013 and 14. But I also think that, it elevated his events back to where they belong. Yeah. Along the way, I heard, and this is going to sound strange to the hardcore boxing fan, but there were comments that I heard, in the lead up to the Plant fight, among, his core base, Mexican American and Mexican fans, not the hardcore, hardcore followers of boxing, but sort of the fans that show up for the big Mexican Independence Day fights who watch a couple fights a year. And I've heard from some of them there, they thought, well, what happened to Canelo? We thought he had retired there for a couple of years. And, he just wasn't as as much a part of the mainstream as his events should have been. And that's no fault of Canelo. His star power is as strong as ever. But he just wasn't getting the mainstream marketing push. He wasn't in the mainstream media like he should have been. And, it felt right. I mean, to me, it generated the type of attention, the type of gate, the type of pay-per-view that he should have been all along. So, he certainly didn't lose anything in the meantime. I think, with our credibility and our marketing expertise, we were able to elevate his events back to where they should be. Those type of mega events that everyone tunes into every year.
Okay, turning pages. Tank Davis has been a cornerstone of Showtime boxing, really boxing itself. Is the plan to get him one of the other big name lightweights this coming year?
Yeah, that's always been the plan. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that and some what I think were misinterpretation of Floyd's comments. Look, I thought we were well on our way to well down the road toward a Ryan Garcia fight, and then some intervening events happened, and it was certainly no fault of Tank's or anyone else's, some health issues for Ryan. So I hope he heals up, gets his feet on firm ground, is able to pursue his career, and then there are, the political and network obstacles, the exclusivity and, that kind of stuff. But I think what we've seen here is a conscious decision by Mayweather Promotions here and by PBC that the train was going to keep moving. The Tank train wasn't going to stop just because one of those big names wasn't immediately available. And I think that's one of the things that, I think has hurt the other big names in that division, is if you look at all of them, from Lomachenko to Teofimo to Ryan, and even to Devin Haney, they've had long periods of inactivity. And it's unfortunate because all those guys are in their prime or very close to it. And, for business reasons or a variety of other reasons, there have been long periods this past year of inactivity. And that's obviously something no fighter wants. But so I think what Tank's plan was, and Mayweather Promotions and PBC, their plan is, look, let's try to make those big fights. If they don't happen, then we're going to keep the train going, keep Tank in the ring, busy against credible guys that are developing his skills. And when those big fights happen and when they're available, they will happen. And I think that's what you've seen. There's been some criticism said, well, Tank should be fighting big names. So, Tank wants to fight big names as much as anyone. The reality is, but he's not going to sit there and wait for them and say, I'm not going to fight until one of these big names will put their name on the dotted line. So, we'll continue to pursue parallel tracks, try to get one of those big names in the ring. But in the meantime, he's going to continue staying busy and doing the best fights and the biggest fights he can that are available to him.
I like it. Getting back to Canelo real quick, you brought up Ryan Garcia and sort of the obstacles that you face making some of these fights. Are there any plans for Canelo in 2022? I mean, Jamal Charlo is out there, David Benavidez is out there, but obviously he has a wealth of options for his next fight.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of talk. In our conversations with Canelo and Eddie Reynoso, we sort of got the impression that the understanding is they were going to take a little bit of time off, rest and recover. It was a really busy year for Canelo. And we start looking, into the details and getting down to actual detailed conversations after the holidays on what he would do next. And I think you've sort of seen that. I think Canelo and Eddie are largely lying low. There's a lot of people speaking for them or about them, but you don't hear really from them. And I think that's by design. If you ask me, I think there's the two fights that you mentioned are the obvious ones. I think those are the biggest ones financially. I think those are the ones the sport wants, the fans want most of all. I think those are the ones that will be the biggest worldwide events. I understand that it would be, somewhat interesting to go at 175, conceptually and see, how we would do there. I get that as a hardcore boxing fan. I get it, but the reality is, those are not either the biggest events that Canelo can do at this stage in his career. Not financially, not sort of, crowd-wise, not in terms of just public appeal. Certainly, legacy and on paper, it's another accomplishment you can say. But look, I think people who are trying to sell a move to 175 and unify the decision are looking to capitalize on Canelo for their own benefit. If I look at what's best for Canelo's legacy in his career and what's going to, build him, I think there are a couple guys still at 168 who, want, have something to say to Canelo. And whether it's Benavidez or Charlo, I think those are the biggest challenges and the biggest commercial events that can be made right now. So, if I had him sitting down right in front of me, that would be my sales pitch.
Now, it's interesting. For years, Showtime and HBO were the pillars of boxing, and then there was the AT&T Time Warner merger, and some people think that HBO boxing became a casualty because of that. Now, Showtime's parent company just recently underwent a merger with Viacom, CBS. Can you shed some light on the differences with this merger and why, at least it appears as if Showtime boxing is stronger than ever coming out of it?
Yeah, I would say that we are stronger than ever. I mean, we have just come off our second busiest year of combat sports in the history of the network. The only busier year by a couple of events was 2011, when we had a really busy boxing schedule, as well as Strikeforce MMA. But in terms of the boxing events themselves, look, we had 20 championship boxing pay-per-view events this year, plus another half dozen ShowBox. So, nearly approaching 30 boxing dates, which is, again, a huge number for us. And it wasn't just quantity, it was quality, as we've touched on. And I think the difference here is, we're looking at this as a global opportunity for the entire corporation. And Viacom CBS has networks in South America, in the UK, in Australia. There's a Paramount Plus streaming platform throughout Europe and Latin America. There is a Paramount Sky joint venture, a Showtime and Sky joint venture throughout Europe. So as we all know, boxing is one of the most global sports there is. So this is no longer a Showtime boxing US type of endeavor. This sport represents an opportunity for the entire corporation across the world on not just linear networks, but streaming platforms as well. So, that's why, I'm so comfortable saying that we've been here and we're going to continue to be here. And people who say that, it's just a matter of time. That's even more ridiculous statement now than it was 2 years ago, because there's even more of an opportunity and even more momentum behind the sport on a worldwide basis from this corporation than there has been at any point in the past.
You listed, the number of title fights and so forth, and the kind of year that you had. Looking back at 2021, what are you most proud to have accomplished?
Well, I think obviously the big events, jump out. And again, regardless of your feelings about Jake Paul in particular, I think it's brought energy and a new dimension and a new fan base to the sport. I'm proud of what we did to elevate Canelo's event, and it was a history-making event and arguably the most important fight of Canelo's career. But I'm also proud that we continue to do things that, are maybe slightly, less obvious. I mean, I think one guy who is not getting the credit that he deserves in 2021 is Stephen Fulton.
Sure.
If you look at the work that he's done over the last year, and being on the verge of maybe fighting for an undisputed title at some point in the next 6 months, and coming from where he was in December 2020 to where he is now in December 2021, with two really high quality, hard fought wins to unify titles in a division, when at this point last year he was really just a prospect, an interesting prospect. I think that's one where we've the work we've done with, as I mentioned, Jaron Ennis, with Brandon Lee, with young guys like Subriel Matias, like Gary Antoine Russell. There's a lot of young fighters that I think we've brought to the mainstream and created a lot of attention around. And I'm just as proud of that, and being able to progress the next generation of stars as we are the big marquee events that we're doing as well.
Stephen, we want to give you a chance to tease what might be coming up. What big fights, specifically, would you like to see in the coming year? And will there be some kind of rollout to announce that?
Yeah, we're at work literally, this week in terms of finalizing, hopefully certainly the first quarter, maybe the first 2 quarters, so we can roll that out in January. Again, I think it's become sort of a staple, a hallmark of our programming to do these things. I remember when we first started doing it in 2018, it was sort of, it was unique. And now I see other networks doing it, and I'm happy. I don't say that as sort of like as throwing shade somewhere and saying, oh, they're copying us. They are, but I'm glad. That was the whole intention. I think we should be more organized as a sport. I think we should be, announcing schedules in advance, and I'm happy others have taken the cue and adopted our approach for that. And it's sort of, what we were doing before. We started with, Showtime Extreme, and televising the off TV fights, and that's something that caught on, and now is sort of the norm across the sport of boxing as well. So, those are things that, we have some pride of authorship on, or pride that we were sort of the first ones to do regularly. But we're glad that they're being adopted, across the sport as well. When we look at sort of our schedule, there's been a lot that's sort of been floated out there. If we can finalize Jermell and Brian Castano, I think that's got to be top of the list for the first half of the year of fights that, we need to see again. I think, either with Stephen Fulton, either a rematch with Figueroa, or potentially, an undisputed fight for him as well. The Canelo fight, David Benavidez. There's a lot to look forward to. I think those are the guys that we're going to see, relatively soon. Are the guys that you've heard a lot of the rumors and confirmed reports about. But I would say the big one, the one that's in sort of bold print, the marquee fight of the first couple months, has to be Jermell and Castano for the undisputed title again.
Love it. In closing, you've already achieved so much in the sport and in your career. I've seen it up close for a lot of years myself. Where do you find the motivation to keep chugging along?
It really is about trying to elevate the sport. I feel like in a lot of ways we've done a lot to organize the sport and help elevate the sport. But I still think the sport is undervalued, underappreciated, and in some ways sort of underorganized. So I know we can do better. I know we can be bigger. I know we can be more of a mainstream force. I think we can continue to build the sport in a positive direction. And, I think that what motivates us all. At a certain level, we all love the live events and the adrenaline and the excitement and that unique atmosphere that the sport of boxing brings. There's no other sport that has the atmosphere of a big fight night, just the anticipation and the energy. And that's part of it, is experiencing that. But being able to take that and spread it and grow it is probably even more important. I think that's, as a group, that's what motivates all of us.
The sport's in good hands. Stephen, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. Happy New Year to you and yours. And we look forward to a fantastic 2022.
Thank you, guys, and thanks for your continued support. I mean, what you guys do is just as important in terms of reaching people and explaining the inner workings of the sport, and continues to spread the gospel, so to speak.
Saturday, January 1st, it's a stacked night of heavyweight fights as Luis King Kong Ortiz
looking impressive.
takes on Prince Charles Martin.
Just the way he wanted it.
Frank Sanchez battles Carlos Negron. Plus, Rice versus Coffee 2 and more. Get ready for a New Year's Day knockout. Live at only $39.99. Buy now on the Fox Sports app and watch on any screen you want.
It's time for the year-end awards, ladies and gentlemen. That would be our PBC 2021 year-end awards, and we've got a lot to go over here. Plenty of categories, plenty of great names. So without further ado, let's jump right into the prospect of the year. Now, quick note on this category: if you want a title, interim, regular, super, whatever, you don't make it on our list. Also, if you're ranked by highly by a sanctioning body, you don't make this list either. We're talking about the real prospects, the up and comers, and the nominees are Chavez Barrientos, Trayvon Marshall, Frank Martin, Atif Obleton, and Jose Valenzuela. And the winner of our prospect of the year is Jose Valenzuela. Mike, an excellent year for this undefeated lightweight.
Yeah, I really love this kid. He's coming off the recent fight against Austin Dulé. I just love the way he looked in that fight, the way he threw combinations. He went to the body all fight long. He just hurt Dulé in so many different ways. And he just couldn't miss the punches he was throwing. He was just remarkably accurate for such a young guy. I think he connected on 60% of his punches. He dominated Dulé. And remember, Dulé wasn't supposed to be a pushover. That was really... I knew Valenzuela was good, but that was really an eye-opener, that fight. He's a really good fighter. I really think this guy's got big things in his future.
Yeah, I agree with you. The week of the fight last week, I remember looking over the vouching and thinking to myself, man, this is a real big step up for Valenzuela. I hadn't really thought about it before, but then he goes out there and, it looked like any other fight for this kid. He's just got an incredible offensive arsenal. You can see the skills, the poise, the patience, and I don't think he'll be a prospect for much longer based on what we're seeing. Let's move along to the guys who've graduated from this and beyond, and this is the Emerging Star Award, and boy, was this chock full of great names. Jaron Boots Ennis, David Morrell Jr., Jesus Ramos, Michelle Rivera, and Gary Antoine Russell. And the winner of our 2021 Emerging Star Award is Jaron Boots Ennis. Mike, we've seen his name everywhere. We've seen the highlights everywhere. Kids the talk of the boxing town, so to speak.
Well, you know how I feel about Jaron Ennis. We all have our favorites, and he's my favorite young fighter. I just think that this guy, he might be the most talented fighter, active fighter. I really think that highly of the guy. He just hasn't demonstrated it yet at the highest level, but I'm pretty sure he's going to do that. He's got everything to me. And the ultimate compliment that I could pay somebody is that he reminds me of Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah.
And he does. He's got the quickness, the athleticism, sort of the cockiness that Jones had. He's got crazy power. He just has it all. I love this guy in every respect, and I just think he's got huge things in his future. He's the kind of guy who can end up number one pound for pound.
Yeah, absolutely. If he continues to develop, and one thing he's got also that's similar to Roy Jones Jr. is his work ethic. I mean, he stays in the gym. He's always working at his craft. He's got a great trainer in his father, Bozy Edwards, at NSN, and a great support system in his brothers who are boxers as well. I just think that when you have that sort of background, when you've been boxing as a little kid and you stay in the gym and you have those natural athletic gifts that, that can only mean good things in your future. And based on what Stephen Espinoza said, the future is now. Let's move on to our next category, comeback of the year. We got a lot of good names on here. In one case, a loss and a comeback all in 1 year. But our nominees are Carlos Adames, Nonito Donaire, Vito Melnicki Jr., Elvis Rodriguez, and Rashi Warren. And the winner of the 2021 PBC Comeback Fighter of the Year is Nonito Donaire. I mean, I think this one goes without saying, although the other guys also had a pretty good year in terms of coming back, but no question in my mind, Nonito Donaire, Mike, is the comeback boxer of the year.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think Donaire started his comeback, if that's what it was, when he gave Naoya Inoue all he could handle last year. Yeah, I think that he proved in that fight that he's still a top elite guy. So he just sort of finished the job this year. He stopped two previously unbeaten fighters, Ubali and Caballo, in the fourth round each time to first win and then defend a world title. And he proved to the world that the old man still has it. Donaire is a remarkable story, isn't he?
Yeah, he absolutely is, and you nailed it. I mean, I think we saw what was to come after the Inoue fight. Although some people were wondering, was that a fluke or is that one last great performance? No, this guy's got a lot more left in him, and he's not just beating these guys; he's plowing right through them. Can't wait to see what 22 holds for Nonito Donaire. Speaking of knockouts and plowing through guys, our next category is knockout of the year. Lot of great nominees here, and a lot of guys who just missed the cut. David Morrell versus Mario Cazares comes to mind, but the nominees are Arislan Lara versus Thomas Lamana, Mark Magsayo versus Julio Ceja, Jaron Ennis against Thomas Delorme, Anthony Durrell versus Marcos Hernandez, and Rashi Warren versus Damian Vasquez. And the winner of our 2021 Knockout of the Year is Anthony Durrell, the dog, for his fourth round KO over Marcos Hernandez. Mike, give us your take on that special performance.
Yeah, this was a hard category because all those knockouts were pretty spectacular. The thing I liked about this knockout, Durrell's knockout, beyond just the sheer drama of the big punch, was that some people wondered whether Durrell was finished as an elite fighter, or at least, starting to fade. Then in a single violent moment, he basically demonstrated to everybody with his actions that he has a lot more to give. So we got the kind of stoppage that we love and a significant statement at the same time. So yeah, that was a big night for him.
Yeah, it certainly was really, really impressive. I mean, he was on our podcast, he said a week before, talking about retirement. And then he goes out there and just flattens the guy with one of the best uppercuts you will ever see. I think the dog Durrell has plenty more left in him. Let's move on to the next category, the upset of the year. And there are a lot of good options here too. So without further ado, the nominees are Michael Coffey versus Johnny Rice. Johnny Rice, of course, with the huge upset win. Manny Pacquiao versus Yordenis Ugas. Ugas coming away, beating the legend in Pacquiao. Jamal James versus Radza Butayev. Butayev victorious in that one. Julian Williams versus Vladimir Hernandez. Hernandez winning the hotly contested decision over Williams. And, of course, Luis Nery versus Brandon Figueroa. Nery, the two-division champ, a decided favorite, but Figueroa just walked right through him. And the winner of our 2021 upset of the year, Yordenis Ugas, for his unanimous decision win over Manny Pacquiao. Mike, I mean, there were a lot of good nominees in this category. But when you talk about magnitude and overall impact in the sport, I think what Ugas did this summer is far and away the upset of the year.
Yeah, I can't say I was shocked at the result given Pacquiao's age and Ugas's ability. That said, Pacquiao was coming off his impressive victory over Keith Thurman to win his title. And in going into the fight, it was difficult to imagine even this older version of Pacquiao getting outboxed. Most people thought, I'm sure, he'll find a way to win. He's Manny Pacquiao. Well, that's not how it worked out. Ugas showed us how good he is. He was ready and he did the job. While Pacquiao was competitive, there was no disputing the decision. Ugas earned that decision. He earned the upset in that fight.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And for the record, there was someone who thought that Ugas might be Manny Pacquiao. You might know him. I don't know, but
well, as I said, I certainly wasn't shocked because we know how good Ugas is.
Yeah, well, it was not a surprise. Yes, I claim that there should be an award for upset pick of the year, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ugas was so impressive. The way he fought, the style, the manner in which he beat Pacquiao was just really disciplined and showed there's so many different facets to his game. And I expect that he'll be in some more big fights in 2022 based off what he just did. Let's move on to the next category, the fight of the year. Nominees are Luis Nery versus Brandon Figueroa, which Figueroa, of course, won by 7th round TKO. Efetor Apochi versus Brandon Glanton. Glanton with the upset win over the undefeated Apochi. Jermell Charlo versus Brian Castagna, the 154 undisputed battle, which ended in a draw. Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, the third bout of their historic trilogy. Fury, of course, recording the 11th round TKO in a fight filled with knockdowns and back and forth action. And last but not least, Brandon Figueroa versus Stephen Fulton, an epic unification battle that Fulton won by split decision, I believe, here. But in any other year, Figueroa versus Fulton might have won. But when you look at what Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder did last October, they are far and away the winners of our 2021 Fight of the Year, Mike.
Yeah, you don't have too many no-brainers in a exercise like this, but this was pretty much a no-brainer. We don't really even have to say too much about this one, do we?
No.
Arguably, the two top heavyweights right there is something special. 5 knockdowns, a late-round knockout to end the fight. As you said, just nonstop crazy back and forth action. I mean, it was just a classic, not just for this year, but I enjoyed watching that fight as much as any fight I've seen in recent years. So yeah, that was really a special night.
Yeah, it certainly was. Just ringside, it was brutal in the back and forth and the ebbs and flows, the momentum swings. It was just fantastic. And it was one of those nights where after the fight, everyone in press row just sort of hung around. Even people who weren't, doing their post-fight report, everyone just sort of hung around, just talked and couldn't believe what they had witnessed. I got to shout out Jonah Dillon from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I believe it was the first fight he had ever attended, and I kind of gave him the heads up that it's not going to be like this every time, kid. There'll be a lot more Holyfield Ruizes than Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder.
Right. Absolutely. But one thing that also made it even better, I think, is maybe to some people Wilder's performance was a little bit of a surprise given what happened in the second fight. We shouldn't have been surprised. In fact, we shouldn't have been because of what we saw. But he dug deeper maybe than some people would have thought to make it as special as it was.
Yeah, he certainly did. And I mean, after that third round, I thought he was done. And then the fourth round, he comes roaring back, and I think Fury's done. And after that, it was, I think Fury controlled it the rest of the way, but Wilder had his moments. Ninth round in particular seemed to hurt Fury again. I believe it was the ninth round, or the end of the 10th. I'm not sure, but you just figured Deontay was one punch away from turning things around. It was just a great night, great fight, one for the ages. Let's move on to the performance of the year. And the nominees are Stephen Fulton for that masterclass against Angelo Leo, winning the WBO 122-pound title. Jaron Ennis in his first big step-up fight versus former world champion Sergey Lipinets. Ennis, of course, stopping Lipinets in 6 one-sided rounds. Gervonta Tank Davis moving up to 140 pounds to take on undefeated champion Mario Barrios. Davis winning by thrilling 11th round TKO. Terrell Gausha versus Jamonte Clark. What was 50-50 battle going in turned out to be 2-round obliteration by Gausha. And Nonito Donaire versus Nordine Oubaali, of course, the comebacking Donaire winning the title with another impressive KO win. And our winner for the 2021 Performance of the Year is Gervonta Tank Davis for his 11th round TKO over Mario El Azteca Barrios. Davis moving up, becoming a 3-division champion and showing that his power is unlike few in the sport, as he handed Barrios his first loss and showed that he carried his power to 140 pounds.
Yeah, I think this performance might be a little underappreciated. You know, remember, Davis fought at 130 pounds in his previous fight, in which he stopped Leo Santa Cruz in that fight. He then moved up to 140 pounds to face an unbeaten secondary title holder, who also happened to be just a naturally bigger guy. I mean, he's going to fight Keith Thurman, for crying out loud.
Right.
It sounds crazy to go from Gervonta Davis to Keith Thurman. And while Davis didn't blow him out, I was impressed with the way he outboxed Barrios. He didn't rush anything. And in the end, he did what he always does. He scored a knockout in the 11th round. That was a big challenge for Davis, and he came out on top. He was up to the challenge.
Yeah, I was impressed as well. I mean, I like the way he's got that veteran's poise. He showed really good defense in that fight. I think it's really an underrated aspect of his game, along with his ring IQ. And then, eventually he found his openings and made Barrios pay. And, Barrios was certainly game. I think Barrios showed what he was made of that night. But Davis is just a special, elite talent. Speaking of elite talent, it is now time for our final category, the Fighter of the Year. The nominees are Stephen Fulton, Nonito Donaire, Gervonta Tank Davis, Jaron Ennis, and David Benavidez. The winner of our 2021 Fighter of the Year, the well-deserving winner, Stephen Cool Boy Fulton. Mike, what a year this young man had.
That's an understatement. He had a breakout year. He started with a tremendous performance against a tough guy in Angelo Leo, as you mentioned. Fulton, easily outpointed him to win the title. And he did it in the trenches, remember, which is supposed to be Leo's wheelhouse. He basically outfought him toe to toe, which really impressed me on top of everything else. That was a special performance. And then he outboxed and outlasted just a beast, as we know, in Brandon Figueroa to win a majority decision that I thought should have been a unanimous decision, even though it was a good competitive fight. And he unified 2 titles in the process. Again, to say that Stephen Fulton has arrived as a star is an understatement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, beating 2 undefeated champions like that. And all in all, I mean, he's been, 9 undefeated fighters in his young career so far. I mean, he really is an impressive fighter. You pointed out beating Leo at his own game. I mean, there's nothing this guy can't do. He can box. He can fight on the inside. He's got the grit. He's got the skill. He's got the ring IQ. He's got the conditioning and the discipline. Really special fighter. I don't think he's hit his ceiling. No way, no how. And we haven't hit ours either. It's a new year. Well, it's about to be a new year, I should say. And we are looking forward to providing you guys with more great interviews, more great boxing banter. Thank you, as always, for listening. We also want to thank Steven Espinoza and Frank Martin for joining us on this week's episode. And we hope you check back in with us next week for more on the PBC Podcast.